Well, howdy doody, folks. Today we're going to be looking at resource management. Quite simply, a resource is something that has use or purpose. And the three most important resources that we need to consider are food, electricity, and water. Without these three things, development is very difficult, or development is limited. So if a country wants to improve the quality of life of its citizens, these things need to be secure. We're going to start off by having a look at food, and I think it's best if we start by using a map. So here we have said map. Just zoom out a little. So this map is showing the global undernourishment. Undernourishment means people aren't getting enough nutrients. And in an exam, you could well be asked to describe the pattern shown on the map. So we want to start off with an overall statement about the headline pattern. And that is going to be that the distribution of undernourishment is uneven. We can see that because we've got clearly a high concentration of lots of, or high percentages of undernourishment here in Africa, whereas in other parts of the world, like North America, Europe, Russia, Oceania, we have low levels of undernourishment. And that's what's required for us to say next. We need to point out that pattern. So we could start off by saying the majority of countries with high levels of undernourishment are in Africa. If you know some of those countries, then it's great to use their names. So you could say, for example, Ethiopia, and let's go for another one, and Central African Republic, both have greater than 35% of their people undernourished. It would be worth pointing out the fact that it's not limited to Africa, and that there are 3 countries in Asia, as well as 1 in South America and 1 in Central America, that also have one of the highest categories of undernourishment. So we call these anomalies, and we can say 1 in South America, 3 in Asia. Now, just to finish it off, we want to point out the areas where there are very low levels of undernourishment. So you could say, in contrast, North America, Europe, and Oceania have low levels of less than 5% undernourished. Always important to use the key or the map itself for figures and to quote those numbers to help you up level and secure maximum marks. So let's have a couple of questions. First of all, what are the 3 most important resources when considering development? Good. Food, electricity or power, and water. And looking at this map here, which continent has the majority of countries with a population that's greater than 25% malnourished or undernourished? Africa, that's correct. Which other continents also have a couple of examples of countries with high levels of undernourishment? Good. Asia and South America. And which continents show countries with very low levels of undernourishment? Nice. North America, Europe and Oceania. Lovely. So that's how we would use a map to analyse what's going on, and it is a favourite to ask about describing the pattern, so be ready to do that. There'll be a practice question on this a little bit later on. Let's have a look at food in a little bit more detail. So, what are the problems of not having enough food? Ultimately, if there is not enough food, it leads to the problem of undernourishment. And this is where people don't have enough nutrients to stay healthy. So as a result, they're likely to get illnesses like anemia, which is a lack of iron, or diarrhea, which we all know what that is, and although it can be a little bit of a joke in countries like ours, this is life-threatening, especially for children in many poorer parts of the world. And both of these illnesses can serve to make people very weak and spending a lot of time in bed. So here we go. Someone saying, "Oh, I'm so ill," lying in bed. And they will be in these countries genuinely very sick. And that might prevent them from going to work. So here's a healthy person with their pitchfork ready to do some agricultural work. But that won't happen if someone is spending many days of the year being sick because they are undernourished. Equally, especially in children, they won't be strapping, strong young men and women like the Dutch, the tallest nation on earth. They will be stunted because their bodies do not receive the nutrients that they require to grow sufficiently. And so in many poor places where undernourishment is a problem, the whole population is quite small because of not receiving enough food. This also links into not being as effective at work, not being able to do as much. It also is going to limit the brain development of, this is my brain, this is the spinal stem. It affects the brain development of people. So unlike smart kids in the UK, children that are malnourished will see their brain literally develop. It is smaller and unable to process as well. So this means that their mental ability is reduced, and again, that has serious impacts for the amount and type of work that people can do. So all of this impact on the work feeds back into the economy of the country and a reduced gross domestic product. So we can see just how serious for a country not having enough food is. One last point is that a lot of these people are going to be so unhealthy that it leads to a higher death rate. Right, a couple of quick fire questions for you. If people do not have enough food to eat, what problem does this cause for them? That's right, they become undernourished, or they suffer undernourishment. Name 2 types of sickness that people can get if they are undernourished. Good, they can become anemic, or they could have diarrhea. What is the impact of people having these type of sicknesses? Good, yes, they become weak and they are unable to be as productive. They're unable to go to work for as many days in the year. How might being undernourished affect the physical development of children? Give me 2 ways, please. That's right, it can lead to stunting and reduced mental capacity. Why is it a problem for a country if many of its people are undernourished and spend more days sick or have stunted growth and reduced mental capacity? Good. It knocks on to the economy. People can't work as many days, or they are unable to take higher level jobs, and so the country's gross domestic product is going to decrease. Great. Nice one. Moving on. Okay, so this is the question I would like you to have a go at now. Explain how food insecurity could affect a country's development. Food insecurity simply means that there is not enough food to eat, or people don't have access to the food, so they might not be able to afford it. Either way, when you have food insecurity, there will be a larger number of people with undernourishment or suffering undernourishment. So really, this question is about making the link between food insecurity and undernourishment. With that in mind, you have 4 marks available. You want to make 2 explained points about how undernourishment can affect a country's development. Have a go, and then pause it, and then click play and look at my answer and green pen your own. There we go. Okay, so how did you get on? Let's have a look at my answer. Remember, we want to make a point and explain it. So food insecurity can cause undernourishment, which will increase the likelihood of illnesses such as anemia when people don't have enough iron. That's one long point, but loving the fact that I've used a technical word like undernourishment, and I've mentioned one of the illnesses that it can cause. So here's my point, a nice strong point. This causes them to be weak and take many days off work, which can negatively affect the GDP of a country. So negatively affect GDP of a country. Remember, this question is about a country's development, and so we do need to be thinking about the link to the economy of the country. For my second point, I've said furthermore, that wonderful connective, it can lead to stunting and reduced brain development. Loving this use of technical understanding and words in young people, so they are less likely to be productive and healthy adults. Here's my explanation: less likely to be productive and healthy adults. Writing something like that will get you 4 marks. Now we're going to move on to talk about water, and what I would like you to do first of all is, from our run through of the food map together, I would like you to have a look at this water map, pause the video and try and write a description of the pattern. It would be worth 3 marks in an exam. So let's see how you get on. Just focus it in for you. As you can see, well, you need to see the key, so let's make sure that everything is visible. Right, so there's your title, Projected Areas of Water Scarcity by 2025. That means areas that will not have access to enough water. Have a look at the key and notice there are 3 colours. The blue is physical water scarcity, as in there is not enough rainwater or rivers. So typically we'd find that in deserts, and we can say that exists here, largely occupied by the Sahara Desert, the Arabian Desert, and then we have the deserts of India, Pakistan. Then we have economic water scarcity. That means that countries can't afford to exploit or make use of their water supplies. So for example, DRC has one of the world's largest rivers running through it. But because it's a poor country, it can't make full use of that resource, and so there is an economic water scarcity because of its level of development. And then finally, the yellows show little or no water scarcity. Once again, we're looking at similar regions of the world that don't have a problem with a resource. So we're not explaining it, you're just going to get on now and describe that pattern. 3 marks, should take you 3 minutes, but I'll give you 5. Pause the video and then unpause to compare your answer to mine. Right then, let's compare notes. So, I said the distribution of water scarcity is uneven. That's my headline pattern. Alright, the distribution is uneven. 1 mark. The northern continents of North America and Europe have little or no water scarcity. So I'm noticing that the yellow is all at the top of the map in the northern hemisphere. And I've referenced the key, quoting the words little or no water scarcity. That would be another mark, and probably I would get a mark for referencing specific areas. So I'm kind of already at my 3, but it's safe, or to be safe, it's useful to finish it off and say, whereas Africa, South America, and much of Southeast Asia have economic water scarcity. Definitely there now, but just to show off, I said that North Africa and West and South Asia also have a lot of physical water scarcity. I think important to mention it because it's clearly on the key. And there we go, 3 out of 3, or however many marks they might have decided to give that question, but it is usually 3. Lovely, let's crack on and talk about water as a resource and why it's important. So, water. Here we have the very easily recognizable symbol of a tap. Water is important for so much. Not only is it about the drinking water that might go to people, I'm so thirsty, but also for their livestock. See, I'm very talented at my Adam impressions. So it's for drinking, obviously, as a priority. Also for washing and for cooking. So that's one use of water, the most obvious one. But water is also used in agriculture. So when we are growing our crops, we rely on water to irrigate. Or irrigation is the process. our crops so that they can grow. Now that can either be naturally from rainfall, or sometimes we need to irrigate it ourselves by pumping water onto the fields. Furthermore, water is a very important source of power in the form of hydroelectric power, HEP. And for many countries in the world, they have the majority of their energy source coming from water and hydroelectric power. So without access to the water supplies, then that is something else that a country will be missing out on. So let's have a look at the impact of having a lack of water or a water scarcity. That means not enough of it. Well, firstly, you're going to have a problem with undernutrition and food insecurity, which, as we know, can have a knock-on effect for health and the economy. Secondly, if we don't have enough to drink or water for cooking with, this can lead to issues for health, where we get contagious diseases or waterborne diseases. And livestock may die, again leading to an negative economic impact. And finally, if we don't have access to a reliable power source such as HEP, we are going to struggle to let me rewind this again. So in order to access the water resources for HEP, it's expensive. It costs a lot of money to build a dam that can generate the power. So that means, and another way is that we can access groundwater by sinking a long well to hit the water table and pump the water up, but that is also expensive. So we run into issues of money, which means that high-income countries, no problem, we can do that. Low-income countries often cannot afford to do that, and so can't take advantage of the water that might be available. When we build a dam, we create a reservoir behind it to store the water. The problem with not being able to afford to access the water is that you end up with a reduced water supply, so not enough access to water. This means that potentially your ability to grow crops as a country is decreased. Your ability to have industry that requires lots of water is decreased. Can't have that, can't have that. And so the economy of the country declines. The GDP is less. With less GDP and less money, you can't invest in the infrastructure needed, like reservoirs, to store your water. And the problem continues. You don't have enough water. So we can refer to this as the cycle of poverty. And it is very hard for poor countries to break out of this cycle of poverty. Key to it is making sure that the water supply is good and that we overcome scarcity. Right, let's have a couple of questions and then I will set you a written one. Tell me 3 things that water is important for. That's right, it is for drinking, both humans and animals. It is for irrigating crops and also to produce power in hydroelectric power. If we don't have enough water, what is the problem in terms of not being able to irrigate our crops? Good. It means that there will be food insecurity and undernutrition, which we know has health and economic impacts. What is necessary for a country to do if it needs to take advantage of its water resources? That's right, it needs to build dams to store the water, or wells to access the groundwater beneath the water table. Why are those two actions a problem for low-income countries? That's right, they don't have enough money to invest in that technology. And if a country doesn't have the money to invest in securing a water resource, what does it get locked into? That's right, the cycle of poverty. Okay, get ready. Here is a written question coming up for you. Right then, here it is. Explain why water is an important resource for a country's development. Notice this is worth 6 marks, and you're going to want to talk through the issues that we've just mentioned. So we want to link what it's used for and how that, if we have enough, how it helps a country, and if we don't have enough, how it is problematic for a country. Have a go and then come back and compare it to my answer. Pause the video and good luck. Righty-ho, let's see how we compare. So my answer starts with, well, first of all, I think it's good to look at like my structure. I've got 2 clear points, and in each of those I've tried to develop it to the extent where it's going to be worth level 3. So I want to make a point, explain it, and then go a bit further to talk about the consequences of that. So let's see what I've done. First of all, water is an important resource because it is needed for drinking and use by people. There is a simple point. Without enough, there should be a comma there, Paul. Without enough, people may get sick from waterborne diseases as they are forced to drink from unhygienic sources. So there's an explanation. And their livestock may die, so that's another point related to the same thing, which will increase rates of poverty, development, and affect the country's GDP. So linking it back to GDP makes sure that I'm addressing this issue of development. And I think as an examiner, if this was a simple question like this, I'd be happy that that's shown evidence of level 3. Second point, very similar. Furthermore, water is necessary for the growth of crops. There's my point. Without reliable access from reservoirs, groundwater, or rain, food insecurity may result. There's a little explanation about the problem of not having enough. The problem resulting from this is that illnesses and sickness will increase and prevent people from working, which will have a negative impact on the country's GDP. Once again, just taking it that bit further and linking to the development of a country. So, have a look at your answer, green pen, and add in any information that you might have been missing. Can you pay particular attention to some of the key words that I've used? So, I talked about waterborne diseases. Make sure you've got that in your answer. Unhygienic sources, good term. Livestock. Poverty. and a country's GDP. Down in this second paragraph, we have water is necessary for the growth of crops. Reliable access from reservoirs, groundwater or rain, food insecurity may result. The problem resulting from this is that illnesses and sicknesses will increase and prevent people working, which will have a negative impact on the country's GDP. Make sure that you're adding in those key terms in green pen. This is the kind of thing that communicates that you know what you're talking about and that you are a candidate worthy of the 5 or 6 marks on offer. Okay, before we move on, let's just do a quick bit of graphical analysis, something that will come up in your exams a lot. Here you have 2 pie charts showing the water use of high-income countries and low-middle-income countries. What I would like you to do is to answer this question. It's worth 3 marks. Compare water use between high-income and low-income countries. Remember that you need to refer to the charts and use actual data and word descriptors from those charts. You need to describe the main points of difference and, if there are any, the main points of similarity. Okay, off you go. After you pause the video, unpause it and have a look at the model answer. Okay, let's see how you did. So first of all, I've started off by making the obvious statement that HICs and LICs differ in the activities that they use water for. I think that's important to say as your starting point. Then we need to jump into some detail and use some facts and figures. In HICs, the majority, 59%, so notice that I've quoted from the source, 59%, and I've used a word that shows that I'm looking at the proportions within that circle, and this is more than 50%, it is the largest category, so it is the majority, is used for industrial use, whereas LICs only use 10% for this purpose. So I've directly compared the yellow segments on both the pie charts, and I think that's a logical step to make to show that there is a difference here. And I've then calculated the fact that that is a difference of 49%. Not strictly necessary, but it is nice to do to show that you're manipulating the numbers, just kind of for your own professionalism. Then I went on to say, instead, LICs use the majority of water for agricultural use. Again, then quoting how much it was, which is 52% more than HICs. I just thought I'd round up by saying both have a similar amount for domestic use, as you can see with these purple categories here. So have a look at that, have a look at your own answer, and see if you might need to add any information or detail. That is a very detailed answer for such a question, and actually I would have picked up marks here for this one statement saying that they are different, and then I would have picked up a mark here for comparing one category in HICs to another category in LICs. So that probably would be my 3 marks. But as always, I just want to make sure, so I went on to make another point which was important about the agriculture, and that would confirm my 3 out of 3. Right, let's have a go at another question. So here we have another graph, and this one is a graph showing global energy consumption. As always, when tackling a graph, first of all you read the title, then you have a look at the axes just to see what we're showing. So this is from 1970 to 2010, and then over here we have global energy consumption, 1,000 terawatt hours. So that is the consumption value up the side. Then we check our key just to make sure we're aware of what that's showing, and that seems to be showing the different regions or specific countries of the world. So here's the question. Describe the changes in global energy consumption shown in figure E. Remember, we want to make a headline point All right, so what is the overall pattern? And you're probably going to want to look at the fact that it does this to make that statement. Then you want to deep dive a little bit and compare some of the regions and how their energy consumption has changed over time. So we have the USA that remains relatively stable with just a small increase from 1982 onwards. Whereas in comparison, if we look at China, we can see that in 1970 it had a very small energy consumption, and by the year 2012 that is much higher. Of course, instead of saying much higher, you are going to then try and read off the axis to give more specific figures. I appreciate that is difficult when it's on a computer screen, but do your best to kind of get into the practice of using dates here and numbers here. Okay, good luck. Come back when you're ready and unpause the video. But for now, pause and get going. And welcome back. Right, how'd you get on? Wonderfully, I expect. So once again, headline fact to start with. What is the overall trend? And the overall trend is that energy consumption has increased between 1970 and 2012. And that's all you need to say. Between 1970 and 2012, the global energy consumption has increased. This would get you a mark. If you exemplify it by using figures from the graph and dates, you can say from 59 terawatt hours. In fact, I didn't add the date here, and so that would be not necessarily a mark loss, but it is lazy and sloppy of me. So I would say in 1970 to around 140 terawatt hours in 2012. An increase of 81. So love the fact that I've then manipulated that and done a quick calculation. So by adding that detail in of the numbers and dates from the graph, I've ensured that I am going to get to 2 marks there at least. Then go a little bit further and deep dive into what's happening. And if we look, we can see that some regions of the world don't really change very much, whereas others, notably China, increase a lot. You do not need to describe every single kind of country block on the graph. Choose 2 that tell the main story and go with that. So as you can see, I have said developed regions like the USA and the EU have shown only very slight increases across the time period. That is a mark. Whereas NEEs, that's newly emerging economies like China, have increased dramatically. There's another mark. From around 1 terawatt hour in 1970 to 15 terawatt hours in 2012, and another mark. So as you can see, I mean, I've exceeded how much I can get as the maximum marks, but I just want to make sure that I absolutely get my marks. Plus, if one of your statements is slightly wrong or incorrect, then you've given yourself some insurance and security, and it doesn't take too long to write something like that. Good. So green pen your own work, add in information that you might not have put in, or key facts that you might not have added. Pause the video if you need to, but in the meantime we are going to move on to look at energy in more detail. Okay, let's talk energy. Remember, this is one of the 3 resources that are most important for the development of a country. We've already looked at food and water, and now we're going to consider energy. You'd never guess that I have practiced this flash to represent energy many times, and it still just looks like some kind of weird boomerang. Anyway, this represents energy. Energy is important for the development of a country because first of all, it allows for industry to develop. So factories that might be used to manufacture products to be used at home or in construction or any other part of the economy, they require large amounts of energy to operate. So we'll talk about manufacturing. The important thing about having a good industrial base, or a lot of industry, is that it provides lots of jobs. Also, it allows a country to export the things that it makes, and both of those are going to lead to an increase in the gross domestic product, the GDP of a country, and they're going to decrease poverty. But in order for all of that to happen, this lovely industry developing, we do need an energy source. Secondly, energy provides or is necessary for a good transport system. So these HGVs that are going to be transporting goods, and these boats that might be exporting the goods around the world, they need to have energy, usually in the form of oil. This again allows export, which is going to and trade, and that again increases GDP and reduces poverty. You see, certain themes get repeated quite a lot. But it's more than just thinking about the kind of economy first off. The provision of energy for domestic use is also very important. We might take it for granted that light bulbs light us in the evening time and allow us to do a range of activities. But in many parts of the world, that's not a given. And the provision of light allows activities like reading to be done later on into the evening. So particularly important for education. Otherwise it goes dark at around 6 o'clock and people have to stop their useful activities. Whereas now children can continue to study and do better at school, and their parents can continue to work if they are doing activities from home, particularly things like sewing. I can't draw a sewing machine, so I'm going to try and draw a needle with some thread. And this again allows the productive hours in the day to be increased, all because the energy has allowed more light into the home. So this results in an increased productivity, where people can study and work. Once more, this drives up the GDP, gross domestic product, because people are contributing, making money, and once again they have reduced poverty. The important thing about doing all of this is that the quality of life increases for the people of the country. Let's have a few questions then about energy. First of all, why is the development of industry important for a country? Good, because it provides jobs and also it provides products, manufactured products for export. And what impact does that have on the economy? Good, yes, it increases the economy, it increases gross domestic product and reduces poverty. Give me another thing that energy, a reliable energy supply, is good for in terms of the economy. That's right, it allows more transport. So we have lorries or boats that rely on the fossil fuel of oil to transport goods, and this increases trade and export, and once again increases GDP. What kind of activities does having energy in the home or in the domestic sector, what kind of activities does this now permit? Good, so it allows people to study, and work later on into the evening. Why is that important for a country? Good. It increases the productivity, and that increases the gross domestic product. Something else that it might facilitate at home is cooking. And so we get these lovely smells wafting through the house because of our reliable energy supply. Okay, so what happens then if... I get to do my flash again. Oh, God. Anyway, what happens if you don't have an energy supply? Well, this means that a country will become less productive. So they're not making as much because the amount of working hours are reduced, but also the number of industries that can develop is lower. And this means that we are going to see a situation where poverty might increase. And that means that we get a decrease in the GDP. And that, with less money, the country can't invest as much in healthcare or in education. And so the quality of life, I'm going to abbreviate this to QOL, quality of life also decreases for the citizens of the country. Right, so this is energy. I'm going to pop back in just 1 second with a question for you to have a go at. Okay, so here's your question. We have a picture source to look at with a heading telling you what it is, and then it says, the question, using figure 1 and your own understanding, explain how energy supply can aid development. The crucial thing about questions like this is that you have to do both. So first of all, start off by using figure 1, referring to it. So you might say, in the picture we can see children studying by candlelight. And then you need to suggest how a reliable energy supply might improve that situation, might lead to development. However, you mustn't only rely on figure 1, because using your own understanding as well, you will suggest other ways that an energy supply can improve development, based on the things we've just been talking about. So with this in mind, pause your screen, have a go at the answer, and then come and compare it to mine, as always. Well, we're on the home straight. Yeah! Let's just quickly go through the answer, and then you're done for another geography revision session. Well done, everyone. Okay, so this is what I wrote. Once again, I'd like to show you the overall structure first of all. I've got one paragraph there talking about one point, and then I've got a second paragraph there talking about another point. Once again, that follows the pattern of making a statement or a point, explaining it and saying why that's important, and then going further, talking about consequences of that and linking other factors in. Okay, let's study in a bit more detail. In the picture, we can see children studying by candlelight. So I'm using the source, using figure 1, which is going to negatively affect their education and quality of life. There is my point. Okay, I've got a mark for that, and I'm into level 1. But I want to go further and talk about how that is going to negatively affect them, or how an energy supply will improve the situation. With a reliable energy supply, children would be able to study later and more comfortably. Now, I would say that that is explaining how an energy supply can improve the situation. So we've entered into level 2. But I want to go further, allowing the young people to do better and earn more in the future, which will reduce poverty and contribute to a growing economy. For me, that is comfortably going into level 3 because I'm showing a clear understanding of how it links back to development. In terms of key words in this answer so far, I know it's not a word that is difficult, but it is useful to make sure we're using language that professionals would use. So we talk about education, quality of life, energy supply. Anything else in there? Allowing young people to do better and earn more in the future, which will reduce poverty and contribute to a growing economy. So these are words that we would want to make sure we're using rather than saying something like more money. All right, talk about a growing economy because that is more technical language. All right, let's move on to the second point, where I'm now going to be leaning on my own knowledge and understanding. Furthermore, having a reliable energy supply allows industries to develop and manufacture things to improve infrastructure. I should have put a full stop there probably because I'm running on a lot. And export to trade and make money. So this really links the point. Supply allows industries to develop and manufacture things. There's my point, which improves infrastructure and exports to trade and make money. I'm explaining how that is helpful to the country. Along with providing jobs, this will all help to increase the country's economy and GDP. As a country gets richer, it can improve services like healthcare and education. Once again, showing the link to development. I understand that industry gets the country out of the cycle of poverty. Let's look at some words here. Industries, a word we'd want to use. Manufacture, showing me that you understand what happens in an industry. Infrastructure, again, that's things like roads or building things using steel that has been manufactured in the country. Export, an understanding of trade. So export, sending to other countries or selling to other countries and making money from it. Along with providing jobs, this will all help to increase the country's economy and GDP. As a country gets richer, it can improve services like healthcare and education. So, with your green pen, please do go through and add in some of those key terms that I've highlighted to improve the quality of your answer, and make sure that you've got particularly this bit that explains your point and says why it's important, and then this bit that goes further and links it to development, showing how it improves. Righty-ho, you are free. Well done, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.